Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. I click a button and the magic begins. Everything changes. I don't think my voice turns into radio, Casey, but maybe it does. I don't know. But my guest today, very cool guy. Very cool, very smart. We're going to learn a lot from him. We're going to geek out about skiing too. Can't wait. A technology-driven marketing leader, thought leader, speaker. Now he's an entrepreneur, crushing it. He's got this real-world SEO mastery. We're going to talk a lot about SEO in this particular episode. I'm looking forward to that, getting through it and debunking a lot of myths. Former SVP of marketing at Overstock.com, founder and CEO at Huckabuy.com, Geoff Atkinson. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Casey. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. This is great. I mean, I enjoyed our previous conversation. I'm looking forward to this one. There's
Likewise.
Stuff to learn. There's stuff to geek out on. Man, there's so many things to do here. So I know we're talking SEO. I know we're talking marketing. Let me pass you this thing. It's heavy for me, but you're out west, so I know you can handle it. Ugh. Okay, here you go. You got it? Go ahead, grab it. Grab it. Okay, there you go. You got Thor's hammer. Look at that, just casual grasp. Let me just wield this Thor's hammer here. So take that hammer and smash for me some kind of marketing myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Set the record straight once and for all.
Yeah, I'll start with, I think there's this misconception in the marketing industry that SEO is sort of a black box, that Google controls, all these things, and they're not willing to tell anybody what's going on. And that's, just simply not true. They're quite open and honest with what they want out of websites. You can kind of reverse engineer what they're doing. You can see them crawling. You can see what they're indexing. They're way more transparent than I think people give them credit for. And a big part of that, I think, is that there's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there. And we talked about this in our previous call. But it's like a $80-90 billion industry, SEO services in particular, which is really consultants, agencies, and they have an average NPS score, Net Promoter Score, of 0 out of 10, which is not just detractors. These are people that are really getting burned and upset about it. And those agencies and consultants often like to have that fear around the black box. That's their business model, is that they know and the company doesn't, and they can kind of hold that over them. So that's probably there's two sort of myths. One is that SEO is a black box and you can't figure it out. And the other is that agencies are the solution. And if you look at that Net Promoter Score, you can tell that it's really not the solution. So yeah, I come from a much more technical background when it comes to SEO, and I know we'll get into that. But there's a couple myths for you that I think need to be fixed.
Smash that, man. Let's debunk this because I mean, I even seem to know. I think I know a little bit about SEO, but I know it changes constantly. Mm-hmm. And I never really thought about the fact that maybe some of these nefarious agencies, I have experienced that. They want you to think that there's mystery to it. There's mystery and drama, almost like they're summoning spirits from another world to make your webpage, load first page on Google. Like search engine optimization, it doesn't have to be so crazy. If it's not a black box and we can decipher it, I mean, how complicated is it? Could you break down like what is SEO in 2020?
Yeah, I mean, if you really want transparency, Google has a really big algorithm update coming in 2021. They call it the page experience update, and you can read all about it right on their site. They talk about what they're doing. They've actually pushed it back because of COVID. They don't want to affect the economy too much. They've been talking about this for close to a year now. So it's a really big update. It might be the biggest update in about 15 years. They've never done this sort of preamble before. So if you go there, you can actually learn, exactly what they're looking for. But the page experience, especially with the shift to mobile, fast page speed, time to interactive being quick, just giving the user a good experience from a performance perspective is going to be a really big factor. So, you don't hear agencies talk a lot about page speed, especially because they can't really fix it. They're not usually
right. You don't need them to fix it either.
Right. And so, that's sort of a 2020, 2021 Big deal. Another one is 50% of searches now are 0-click. So people will search either by voice or on their computer or on their phone, and they just get the answer. They get what they're looking for. What's the movie time? What's the sports score? What's the weather? So 50% of searches are 0-click. And that shows you just how much search results have changed from the 10 blue links that we used to see 10, 15 years ago to, just search for something and look at what that search engine results page looks like.
Yeah.
It's totally transformed to the point where 50% of people aren't even clicking through and having to go anywhere. So the industry is changing. It's very, in my opinion, like big technical changes that allow them to do these things. And so another myth is like the idea that content is king. That's such a marketing term that's used all the time. Content is very important, but I wouldn't say it's king anymore. There's other fundamental things that you have to do in order to achieve great search rankings, and content is not extremely high on the list, actually. So yeah, another myth that I'll debunk for you.
Yeah, you're just on a roll. So if I were to ask you like the top 3 things you got to do to rank high on Google, is that oversimplification or would
No, top 3 is fine. So I think the technical foundation of your site, so mobile friendliness, page speed, the site architecture, does it include structured data? Is there not a lot of JavaScript? Are you using stuff like dynamic rendering? Like there's a lot of technical advantages, and that sort of is like the foundation of the house. The house, if it's built on a bad foundation, there's just no way that Google's going to rank it. So you could have the best content in the world, but if it's taking a long time to load or it's filled with JavaScript, they might just not be able to crawl it, and they just won't understand it. So a good technical foundation is super important. The next is a really obvious one, but it's links. So links still matter a lot.
They do. Okay.
Backlinks matter. And a lot of times backlinks are driven by good content, but they can also be driven in lots of different ways. But links are like one of the most, important indicators that Google cares about. And then sort of like site freshness, I'd put close to the top, which is a content piece that you're not just writing like one blog article a month, but you're sort of regularly updating content so that when Google comes back, they see that the site's changed. They want to index it more often. Those are some fundamentals. So technical SEO, backlinks, and fresh, like sort of almost daily slight shifts in content so that the site in Google's eyes appears to be changing quite frequently. If you do those 3 things, you'll be in good shape.
Wow, that's great to hear that. You hear a list like that. It really helps see a window into the black box. Talk for a second about like, and I maybe even just did this with my question, and because I know I've known this about, they're constantly changing, right? Didn't like the old school method, was it all backlinks, or how did they originally get started? Like Google, they used to rank based on something, but then they kept changing it.
Yeah, so Google's big breakthrough, if you go back and actually read Sergey and Larry's paper, was the importance of links. And links were like votes, but not every vote was created equal. And then links established what they call domain authority and also page authority. So it used to be if you searched on like Alta Vista or Ask Jeeves for like an iPhone, it would show, a pretty bad result set because they weren't counting the links. Now, because Apple.com has a ton of backlinks, that noise is eliminated by the fact that, they're always going to rank number 1 for iPhone because they have all the links. They are Apple. So they were the first ones to sort of put into play the idea of like links, anchor text, the text in the link is more important than the text on the page. Those were the fundamentals that really mattered. And for a long time, you could game them, right? You could purchase links. You could add lots of, repeat the keyword over and over and over again. That worked better for the old search engines before Google. But there were some tricks, there were definitely some tricks. And they've eliminated basically, they're constantly trying to make the algorithm more relevant and better and give people, they really care about their users. So they don't want the tricksters. So you really can't do that sort of black hat SEO anymore.
Yeah. And so it's like almost this constant evolution battle where they're trying to get us the best result. And then people are like, marketers be like, hey, how can I game this so my client's number one?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that defeats what Google's trying to do, which is make sure they have the best result. And so there's this like tug of
Mm-hmm.
war, and they keep changing things. I remember when I had a friend who mentioned who's doing one of the things you mentioned. She's like, I don't show up on Google anymore. Like even for my search for my own brand, I don't show up anymore. I was like, that seems weird. And I went to look at her site and it looked fine until I got to the bottom, and there was this big the whole white area at the bottom. Like, why is it so white? And I clicked and I scrolled. There were a bunch of all these white keywords on a white background. Like, ooh, look at me tricking Google with white on
Right.
white. And they won't know this, but they'll see all those keywords. Like she had used old school SEO to try to
Mm-hmm.
game things and not kept up with the updates like you're talking about, and found herself getting whacked, got penalized off.
Yeah. I mean, we got penalized so bad at Overstock. I mean, we grew it from a channel of 0 to a channel of over 300 million,
Wow.
and just like in like 4 or 5 years. And we had pushed the limits so far that we got banned for 6 months, which is a huge financial impact. It's sort of a badge of honor to hardcore SEOs. They're like, yeah, you're that guy at Overstock.
Well, this is the hardcore marketing show. So
Pushed it. Yeah.
tell me
Pushed
this
it so
hardcore
far.
story. What happened? What kind of?
Yeah, we were doing everything you could. You know, we were primarily, there were companies that you could buy links from. There was, it's actually a pretty well-known company now called Conductor that's on the up and up, and they do great things in SEO. They specifically do a lot of analytics and things like that. But at the time, their first business model was they would buy display ads at huge sites like the New York Times or
Sure.
USA Today, just very high domain authority sites. But their deal with these sites was they didn't really want to have any tracking. They just basically would use these ads to put nice, clean links that you could buy. Hell of a business model. I mean, we were spending tons and tons of money with them.
Smart.
But Google figured it out, and we got sort of made an example of, especially in the e-commerce business, and got banned for 6 months, which is a really scary 6 months.
I mean, you don't even show up.
Nothing. Totally gone.
Like, wow. Like you can't even negotiate with them or anything. You're like, hey,
No.
we're sorry. You know, like, no, they're just like, bye.
Bye. Yep. It took us a
Wow.
long time, and we had to make a really big case for ourselves, and we had to delete a lot of links, and we just had to go through almost a detox of black hat SEO for us to get back. And it took us like 6 or 9 months. I mean, it really took a long time. So, you can't do that. You definitely can't do that anymore. I mean, we kind of got away with it for years, and it really, we drove a lot of revenue, but
yeah.
That's sort of my war story when it comes to SEO.
Jeez. Were you like, okay, cool, next job, or did you help them work it through?
I helped them work it through.
Wow.
It was a stressful time, but yeah, I was there for the battle to get back on.
I had heard JCPenney's had something similar happen.
Yeah,
Do you recall that one?
did.
What did they do?
Mm-hmm. Same story. It was exactly the same thing.
Exact same thing? So when
Pretty
JCPenney was
much.
getting whacked, you guys were getting whacked too?
They were doing some other sketchy stuff, like sort of like bad content, auto generation of content and stuff. But it was fundamentally sort of the same story as Overstock's. But Overstock's was a bigger penalty than theirs was, actually.
Jeez. It's kind of weird that they have that much power, but I don't know, man. It's like, wow, Daddy Google put me in the corner and nothing I can do about it. Sometimes I'll see a message board where someone's like, hey, my AdWords account got blocked or banned. Does anyone have a contact at Google I can reach out to? It's like, good luck with that, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Man.
At least on the paid side, it's a little bit easier. You do have someone to talk to. On the SEO side, they have no one to talk to.
Nobody to talk to.
They keep that, they keep that team close.
You got to find them in the parking lot down at Palo. Hey, unban me.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've experienced, and they call that, what they call it, black hat, right? Like wizardry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's sort of like, it's frowned upon behavior that you just can't really do anymore. But it used to be very powerful. Black hat SEOs made a lot of money for a long time.
Interesting.
The affiliate sites, and that would figure out black hat SEO and get a huge amount of traffic siphoning through their site where they're taking 15% affiliate commissions. I mean, they just make tons and tons of money.
Yeah.
It was a wild, those days. I started there in 2005. That was my first job out of college. And those were like the Wild West days of the internet. I mean, you could do anything. it was built for creative minds, and
Yeah.
I like to think that I was sort of in that zone where, there wasn't a playbook. We were literally making it up as we go, and storming the next town over, and
Yeah.
it was pretty wild. It's a lot more diplomatic, I feel like, now than it was back then.
But how cool is that? I mean, sometimes sales gets all the, especially in the B2B world, they get all you ring the bell, hit the gong because they can see the direct impact of sales. But, in the B2C consumer SEO world, especially if you can track it, you're like, oh, we tried a little witchcraft over here with this SEO, and it looks like we've experienced this huge jump of like millions of dollars and more purchases. I mean, it's some serious stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it was. And what was cool about my Overstock experience too, is that it wasn't just SEO. We did email marketing. We were one of the first companies to do personalization. In one of my, I wouldn't say it's a claim to fame, but people find this funny, is how when you go to an e-commerce site and now you leave and you'll see display ads showing you the products that you clicked on or added to your cart.
Totally.
So I actually invented that idea. And I remember my mom coming to Overstock and just freaking out. She called me and she's like, Overstock's just following me around the internet. Now it's like just par for the course. But, those were the types of ideas that we could execute on and figure out. It's another long story on how we did that. But it's, you could do, and still to this day, right? We're still figuring stuff out and trying new things. And there's fresher landscapes than SEO, such as like this social and such. But yeah, very, very cool time to be in the mix and doing what we got to do.
Yeah, it is. And you sort of have seen the different evolution and changes. And is there like the biggest mistake people are making these days? Do people, what kind of wrong path are they taking? Not even on purpose, like black hat. They don't really even realize they're doing it. Do you see about people making mistakes?
Oh yeah, a lot. I mean, I'd say probably the biggest mistake that marketers usually make is so much attention to their paid channels, like almost 90% focus on paid search, social, display, media, and like 10% focus on the stuff that, in my opinion, really matters, like email, CRM, SEO. That's a huge mistake. Like, it's just easier. It's, you can make adjustments and they happen overnight. It's not as technical. You don't need a engineering team to figure these things out. So that's a huge mistake. I think also this like content marketing revolution is just sort of bizarre, where we see companies, especially enterprise companies, actually at all stages, that'll just throw content resources at things without any sort of agenda or plan or strategy behind it. And they'll just basically be writing content for content's sake. And they're not checking to see, is it actually like paying off? They're just doing it because everybody else is doing it. So marketers are sort of like a little bit like lemmings. They just sort of follow what's hot and what's sexy at the time and what they're good at and what they enjoy doing, versus like the real fundamentals that can impact the business the most. And that take time and take tech investment and stuff like that. So I don't really blame them in that. I get it, but I just see it happen over and over again, that the shiny new object always stands out, and instead of like really going after the stuff that matters.
Yeah. We're like cats chasing lasers. We're just like,
yeah,
whoa, what's that? The new latest intent data. The new latest this or that. Talk to me about the tech side. In the past, I've sometimes even said that like the tech side was, is it as complicated as it sounded? Because you mentioned several different aspects to it. Do I need an agency for that? Like, how complicated is the tech side, and how do you manage it for SEO?
The tech side of SEO is pretty complicated. For example, just in the last year, Google's come out with something called dynamic rendering. And dynamic rendering basically means like a site loads dynamically based on what's calls it. So if I call a site on my mobile device, I'll get one experience. If I call it on my desktop, I'll get another. But the big change is they came out and said, well, now you can actually give a version just for us.
Really?
And the reason for this was JavaScript. So JavaScript's like the bane of their existence. They can't use their normal crawler to crawl JavaScript. Once they come upon it on a page, they have to kick that page to what they call their rendering queue, which is a process that takes a lot of energy, like a lot of computing power. It usually takes, it could take up to like 3 or 4 weeks to get a page crawled.
Gross.
And it just makes it really hard for them to crawl and understand the internet. So that's why they offered up this dynamic rendering where they said, give us a JavaScript free site. And that's one of the products that Huckabye does. We convert a site into flat HTML and make them a lot lighter, faster, easier for them to crawl. So that's like a really big tech change. If you wanted to build your own dynamically rendered version of your site, that's a big undertaking. I mean, that'll take you months.
I think we have issues just building the human version,
right?
Not even responsive, right? Let alone, yeah.
And so that's, there are some big challenges. You're never going to find an agency that can do this sort of thing. I really I see most great companies that do SEO well have an internal team. They have engineers working on it. They're not leveraging outside stuff. Other than technology pieces, like they'll use analytics tools, they'll use Huckabye, they'll, work on page speed with some tools, but the people and the talent is usually internal, because it needs to be technological, and you can't really outsource development all that well. So it is complicated. It's like structured data, which is just in and of itself, it's like a language that powers actually all the cool enhancements to search results. That's a hard thing to do, and that's a very technical thing to do. So, the real idea of Huckabye is to like just create the technical solution for SEO as a software. So,
okay, cool.
You can check all those boxes by buying a license, and they're just done for you. So that just didn't exist. So that's what we're building at Huckabye.
Right, because I was going to say, like, you're like, oh, you need a dev for that. I was like, some companies, they probably are 3 marketers behind, and they only have like a shop of one, and it's like, how do I, and SEO came up for me today, but it's like SEO, we got to do that, we got to do this, we got like 9 different things, and sales is like, hey, well, how come we're not ranking for this? You're like, because we got 1,000 hats to rank for, or 1,000 hats to even do, let alone think about SEO. Can be kind of challenging, but I'd like that you've distilled down the 3 things that we need to focus on. And you don't have to try to manage the tech side yourself. That's cool.
If I was to emphasize one undervalued aspect of the algorithm today, but even more so with this update, it's page speed. Page speed is a huge problem across the entire internet. Google's been talking about it for years, just yelling about page speed, page speed, page speed. No one's been listening, and they're about to punish everybody that hasn't been listening.
Damn.
And so that's something to really, if you're listening and you're wondering, what should I work on next when it comes to SEO? It should probably be page speed. You should read about the new update coming in 2021 and figure out a game plan for how you're going to, because they're going to basically do the overstock thing. They're going to kick people off search results that don't have, a decent page speed.
So question number 1, how do you know if you're slow? And is it like, if you can tell it's slow, but is Google?
Yeah, there's tools. So the 2 tools that I recommend, there's Google Page Speed Insights, which is just what a marketer could normally just use, drop in a URL and it'll give you a score out of 100. So Google Page Speed Insights is good. The tool that they actually use in the algorithm is called Google Lighthouse Report. And the Google Lighthouse Report actually Google Lighthouse is a part of your Chrome browser. So the way that they actually measure page speed is if you don't uncheck the box, which nobody does, saying don't send my data to Google, 99% of people around the world that have Chrome browsers, they're constantly feeding Google information about page speed. So say I'm here in Park City today, I go to huckabye.com, that's going to, through my Chrome browser, actually tell Google how fast did huckabye.com load. If you go to my site today too, same thing. Like if you're there in Nashua, New Hampshire, and they'll see what your score is, or if someone goes in India. So that's actually how they learn. It's an extension too that you can get on your Chrome browser that just measures page speed. That's the most accurate, and the one that like developers and people that really care about it use Google Lighthouse Report.
Okay, so I just did page speed insights on CheshireImpact.com. one of my sites here, and it
Mm-hmm.
tells me, and it's red, so it can't be good. It tells me 11 out of 100.
Yep, that's pretty common. You're not alone. Don't worry.
Is this just I have a shitty host, or like what's the deal? Could it be the host or the site or both, or
So if you scroll down a little bit, it'll actually tell you about the biggest offenders. Usually it's like image sizes, non-compressed JavaScript. Usually what you think of a website almost like a tree with roots, like it's a tech stack, right?
yeah?
And when that first call is made, you only have a certain amount of resources that are like yours that get
Okay.
called right away. And then stuff like your chat box or your analytics provider, they could be in Seattle and the next one could be in London, and they have to call all of those things for it to come in and build the page. So what Huckabee does is we work at what they call the edge, and the edge is basically distributed around the world. It's a cache, so it's basically like memory. It's in memory, and we handle those requests. So we compile the whole site, that whole thing that it takes the website to appear, and then we cache it at edge around the world. So whenever anybody comes in, it's just bang bang. It's not going through all that maze.
Oh.
But yeah, so first contentful paint.
So what I did is for people listening, I shared my screen with him, the results. So if you're curious, you can check it out. They'll show on YouTube. But yeah, what are you seeing with my tea leaves here from the lab data?
So the one that's a big part of the update coming is this time to interactive. So basically that means how long does it take them for the page to load before they can crawl it? And yours is saying 20 seconds right now, which I know that sounds really harsh.
That sounds harsh.
If I load it, it doesn't take 20 seconds. But what they're doing is they're using a very slow connection speed so that they can really break down and analyze what's going on. So time to interactive is really important. Your first content, the main ones are first contentful paint, which is like how many of the things, it's a earlier metric. It's like when does the site start to like really come to fruition? And then time to interactive means that they can actually really interact with it. But if you think about them, right, when they're coming to your site, if they take 4 or 5 seconds before they can do anything, versus if it happens instantly in like 100 milliseconds, that's time that they're just wasting. They're just there and they're going to move on, right? They're either going to move on to a different page. They're not going to crawl it. They're going to jump ship. And that's another huge problem in SEO that people don't realize because there isn't as much data around this is, are you actually being indexed? Like if it takes 20 seconds time to interactive, you're not getting indexed. Anything over 5 seconds and they just leave.
Really?
So there's some issues, and a lot of people won't want to face these issues because they're hard to fix. They're just hard to fix. Shameless plug, but Huckabee has a page speed product now that's built for this specific update. But
so you could fix me, is what you're saying?
We won't completely fix you, but we would help a lot. Yeah, it would move you into a much better position than you are.
Is any of this saying that it's a shitty host, or this is all like the site and the design of the site? Maybe it's just a WordPress site, but maybe we've added some goofy.
Yeah, there's probably if you scroll down a little bit more.
Oh, there's more. Yeah.
So
opportunities.
You're not serving your images in what they call like next gen formats. So that's 4 seconds there. Render blocking resources, another 3 seconds. There's 3 seconds of unused JavaScript. There's a second worth of unused CSS. So they'll actually tell you, like they're working on this, right? You can tell that this is when I say like, this is not a black box. If you actually care about these things, like you can look and see what Google's recommending and go fix them.
Yeah. I clicked on a caret and under unused CSS, and it was telling me I have some of these CSS files here that are just not being used. I should vanquish them.
Right.
Damn. This is like a whole new world. And so what you're saying is at what point 2021 is this the shoot?
They say early 2021. They haven't given it a date, and they probably won't, but it's going to be probably in the first quarter of 2020.
People like notice shit will start happening. I'm like, what?
Oh yeah, it's going to be maybe the biggest update they've done in 15 years. I mean, they've never talked about an update this far in advance ever before. So, and then to postpone it because of COVID, like they're worried that it's going to have an impact on the economy. For them to know it's that significant, it's going to be a big update.
What percent of what you're seeing here is, I imagine like your app can only help me so much. With some of it, do I got to get a dev on here to like start changing my images and start?
Yeah, I mean, if you just put a good developer with even a decent developer with Google Lighthouse, which is a little bit more detailed
Yeah.
version, they can really pick through some stuff and fix it.
Uh,
Our product does a lot because we're caching at edge, which is sort of hard for a developer to do on their own.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but usually, like if you're at like an 11, you go to like a 40 with Huckabye. It's usually like a anywhere, but if you're
Okay.
like an 80, you can go to a 90. So it's not, and it depends on the site, but it's a big impact. And
Well, that's honest of you. You're not telling me I'm going to go from 11 to 100.
yeah, no, that's then you have
A
some other
40 is still
fundamental.
red. It's still red. So it sounds like,
Yeah.
do you have like partners and stuff that do this more of the services side that you trust that aren't selling snake oil?
Not for this. We do when it comes to SEO. Like we do have a couple trusted agencies that were like, these guys aren't going to screw you.
Got it.
But for this, because it is so technical, it almost has to be done internally. It's hard to find a third party that's going to be able to fix this problem. And that's another reason why page speed just is a problem, is that it's a very hard problem. It's a hard problem to solve. To like, you can just look at this and you're like, boy, this is a lot of stuff. It could take, a year. And you have a lot of other dev priorities before page speed probably. So something that really easily, quickly gets a sort of downplayed and kicked to the next year or whatever. But the day of reckoning is coming in 2021.
Yeah, for sure. I'm kind of fortunate that I've got like a marketing automation agency, and we've got some creative resources that are really smart with this stuff. And I imagine they could tackle this. But I'm thinking of the companies that they don't have that, where it's like, dang.
Yeah. Well, Huckabye has a free beta right now.
Okay.
If you do want to try the page speed product, I don't want to plug Huckabye all the time here, but
it
is a way to like kind of.
Well, if I was an 80, maybe I'd try it out. But like, I'm a freaking 11. Is there worse? I mean, there's not much worse than 11. I need to find somebody that's worse.
I think the average is something like 25 or something. So it's a bad scene just in general. I've seen worse. So,
all right. Well, I turned off my screen sharing and then I typed in a competitor. If they're higher than me, I'm going to lose my mind, people. But yeah, they are higher. Damn it. Not by much, but they are. Interesting. So, I mean, it's almost like why people just don't know about it? They're just not aware?
I mean, good SEOs are definitely aware of it.
Yeah.
It's just a hard thing to like if you have a bunch of marketing like things to do, page speed is probably not high on that list. Because it is so hard. It's technical. It's not your normal, like you can't put a marketing intern and go like, hey, marketing intern, go work on our page speed. Like you need like a well-paid developer. So there's many reasons why it isn't sort of talked about, but this is the type of stuff that I cared about, that sort of made my career. When I think of myself as like a technical marketer, these are the things that really matter. Like this matters way more today than your page, your PPC campaign, or your branding, or your, like this is super important. And this is the example of like, people are working on, when we talk about mistakes, like people are just working on the wrong stuff because it's easier for them to work on than saying, hey, there's a really big algorithm update. And we see it as an opportunity. Don't be fearful about it. This is a great time to jump ahead of everybody because no one else is working on this. So you get it right, and you're going to have a nice day sometime in Q1 of 2021 and jump all your competitors. So
that's a really good point. And the only reason they'd know that because they heard this conversation on the Hardcore Marketing Show.
That's why we're hardcore, Casey. We're getting hardcore about it.
Yeah, but you are right. I mean, there's the initial freak out moment of like, I'm an 11. But then there's the next moment of like, yeah, but your competitors aren't 100.
Yeah, when you find stuff that's really bad, that's usually a good thing that you found it, and it will probably give you more uptick than focusing on something that's going really well. So anytime you find something that's like really kind of, you're like, oh boy, that's not good. that's a chance, right? You're in business, you're doing well today. Fix that problem, and you'll probably get more than, fine tuning your PPC ads or whatever it is that you're typically working on.
That's a great point, man. That is a really great point. And it really, sometimes I ask on the show, like, hey, what's exciting you about the future? But you really kind of have me thinking like, oh, I'm actually excited about this. Yeah. Like it is an opportunity. It doesn't have to be a negative.
When people say like, I just can't seem to rank, and we do all this content, I'll look at their page and it'll be something like this and be like, Google hasn't even crawled you. Like, they're not even looking. So you could be writing all the content you want. That's just throwing money out the window, because they're not even getting to it. They're not even seeing it. When there's those, and you hear that, like if you're around marketers, you hear that, like, I just can't get it to rank, like all the time. And very often this is the reason. Like, they might have backlinks, they might have great content, but the site's not fast enough, especially they have like a totally different mobile index, and mobile's now, a huge percentage of searches online. They just won't include you. Like, there's no chance that you'll rank on a mobile device if your site speed's slow.
Wow. Earth-shattering changes going on here. Appreciate you guiding me through this murky maze, man. My next question is like, who are you? How did you become this all-knowing wizard? Black, white, gray. You like Gandalf now with like the white or yellow, red? Are you kind of in between the light and the dark? Where are you at now? And who are you, really?
Yeah. I definitely didn't anticipate this being my career or building a company around this.
Yeah.
So I'm actually from the Boston area. So now I live in Park City, Utah. Huckabye's based in Park City, Utah. It's a little ski town in Utah, about 7,000 feet. I grew up in Boston, South Shore of Boston.
Oh, nice.
I was a cross-country ski racer, of all things.
Really?
Spent a year on the U.S. ski team, raced in college at Division I level. Went to school in New Hampshire. We talked about that last time.
Yeah, New Hampshire. But before we go anywhere, U.S. ski team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Doing like a cross-country event?
We went all around. We spent that winter, the 1 year I was on the team, we were based out of Sweden. And so we raced a lot in Scandinavia, which is where all the good cross-country skiers are. Wow. Kind of a random sport that opened up a lot of doors for me. It got me into college. It got me to travel the world, got me to see the United States. It's really, opened a lot of doors for me. So that was, I got into Dartmouth, which I never would have gotten in without, I wasn't that great of a student. So I would never have gotten in without being a good skier. And Dartmouth's in New Hampshire. I spent a lot of time there. And then I was planning on moving to New Zealand. Like, I had a friend, a ski racing, a downhill ski racing friend who was from New Zealand, and he had a house in Queenstown, and his family owned a bar, and I was just going to go there. But my mom was like, you have to take at least one job interview before you leave school, because we've just spent all this money and experience for you. And so I did. And between her and my sort of career services person, they spent a lot of time trying to pick what the interview was. And it ended up being this quickly growing e-commerce company out of Salt Lake City called Overstock.com. And came out here. They're based in Salt Lake. I came out here. I was a just broke college kid, and negotiated to get a day of skiing in a hotel. And it was just like one of those perfect ski days in Utah with, waist deep powder at Snowbird. And, then I was just sort of convinced. I went to the company the next day, and I thought it was really cool. I met the CEO. It just seemed like a good group of like young professionals that were really charging hard, working hard, really, really smart. And so I ended up at Overstock, bottom floor. I was a low man on the totem pole. I didn't even have a job title for my first 3 months. I was making no money. It felt like a lot of money to me coming from college. I sort of had a knack for this. I didn't know I wanted to be in like internet marketing. I just sort of ended up there. And I started on the email team. We grew that from like 50 million to like 200 million. Just kind of had a mind for digital marketing and like how it works, and a bit of a business mind as well.
Put up combination.
Put up enough sort of points on the scoreboard, if you will, that the CEO kind of took me under his wing. He was my mentor. his godfather was Warren Buffett. His dad was the CEO of Geico, just like incredible business background. And so it was sort of like the perfect job out of college. I was there for 7 years. We did a lot of stuff. I worked really hard. I eventually became, senior vice president in charge of marketing, and I ran analytics, and I even ran buying. And
so you basically like grew up in that same company.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. And fortunately it was big enough that there was like really good training in place. I was moving up quickly, so I needed a lot of like leadership training, and I got all of that. Like, I encourage young people at the beginning of their career. It's great to work, like everybody wants to kind of work for a startup or whatever, but the larger companies are large for a reason. They have great training programs. You can learn a ton. You can build a career like inside an Overstock or inside an Amazon or inside a, American Express, or they're there for you to build a career. And that's just, I got a great opportunity and I took it. Worked my ass off and I took it. So then I left. I worked in Colorado for a little bit at a startup that ended up selling a luxury travel startup. It was sort of a crazy 6 months. And then I came back to Utah and started Huckabye.
Jeez. And what was the thought about starting Huckabye? How did you do it? Did you saw some untapped need, or what was the spark?
So the original, no, it was nothing like that. It was really
a magic moment. You hit on toilet, you invented the flux capacitor kind of thing.
Yeah, no, nothing like that. It was a terrible idea. The first idea for Huckabye and who we were for 2 years was a B2C affiliate site that showed, it was basically like a comparison shopping engine that showed different prices with coupons. Terrible idea. Google hated affiliate sites at the time. It was a total SEO play. So it was totally failing. I think the most money we made in a month was like $15.
Sure.
So it was just going nowhere. And, but we'd built some cool SEO automation software that people that knew me and knew the company wanted to start licensing. So we pivoted about, 4 years ago into this software business. And that was the best idea ever.
Jeez.
So now, we're getting pretty, we've got right around 20 employees. We're growing like a weed. The product's insane. It works really well. Very fortunate to have the startup where it is now. It's, you have your own business. It's not easy. It's a fight. So feeling very fortunate to be where we're at.
Man. Yeah. It's like, it's a wild ride, right? It's different than being in the big company. You're wearing lots of hats now.
Yeah. I joke that, you go from like having 300 employees and an assistant that gets you lunch to like, you're putting IKEA furniture together. Like it's nothing glamorous about being a startup CEO. It's just, it's a slog at first.
Yeah. Jeez. So
we have the ski thing, and we've got the New Hampshire and ski thing in common.
I know.
I love that state. I love
skied all around the area, and
yeah, of course. Yep. A lot of time. I love Sugarloaf in Maine is one of my favorite mountains. I usually like the places where I skied the fastest because it's just like positive memories. So, but
where you actually won the
race, where I like do really, exactly. So I always skied well in Maine, but I spent a ton of time in New Hampshire and Vermont. And racing in college, you do what they call the carnival circuit, which is you go around to different ski schools. So like there's the Dartmouth Carnival, there's the UVM, University of Vermont, University of New Hampshire, Middlebury, Williams, Colby. So you literally spend all winter, every 3 to 4 days a week at a different school racing. And so that's a pretty cool experience to
how does that work with school?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, you leave on typically you leave like Thursday, sometimes depending on how far away it is. So you leave Thursday, you race Friday, Saturday, you come home Sunday. So you miss 2 days of school.
You just can't have classes on those days.
Yeah, you just sort of work. Dartmouth, it's like something like 55% of the kids that go there are athletes. So they just make sure that it's, you're set up for success, both as an athlete and as a student. There's lots of options to make sure.
That sounds like a better college experience than I had.
It's pretty ideal.
Yeah. And so I haven't had a chance to really ski out west at all, ever. other than Seattle or, Washington State. So what is the difference in any, do you have to change your style when you're doing the differences? Cause I'm skiing on ice over here. You know how it is.
Yeah, you'll love skiing in Utah. I mean, I would never ski. I hate to say this, but I probably would never ski on the East Coast again.
I believe
It's
you.
like it's so
I believe you.
so much easier. Like your skills from skiing on that ice will make it so much easier when you come ski here. I mean, imagine just like it's perfect. Like it's fresh snow every day. It's perfectly groomed. The weather's nice. It never gets like really cold. There's no humidity. It's just dry. Tons of snow. It's like perfect. It's a huge reason why I live here. I can walk out my door and, I'm looking at a ski slope right now, right out my window. So, you should try it someday, Casey. You should come.
Seriously. Well, COVID ends. I'll give you a call.
Yeah. Perfect.
And my site will be an 80 out of 100 at that point.
Yeah.
And
money hand over fist because we'll have
too.
all the rankings and exactly. We'll get you dialed in Utah. You'll probably but I love the East Coast. I miss it.
Yeah.
I miss during COVID not going back there because I miss my parents and stuff. So New Hampshire is a special state. Live free or die.
Live free or die, man. Yeah, it's a cool place. This past Tuesday I actually went rock climbing.
Oh, wow.
It was like my birthday. So I took the day off and I went up north and did some rock climbing. But what was cool is in the past, the rock climbing would be, as part of a group or someone else was setting it up. But in this case, it was actually a smaller class, private class where the goal was to learn how to set up top ropes and set your own anchors up and do your own, so you could do your own thing later. And so I was paying attention, taking notes. Okay, what kind of rope do I need? What kind of anchors do I need? And how does he setting it up? And how many backups? And so we set stuff up, like 50% set it up, and then 50% climbed on it.
Yep.
And I got to tell you, it's so much more comforting to connect to a tree than it is to find 4 or 5. Got some bolts, got some cams stuck in a little crack here, and you're like, I'm hanging on that. That's so wild. But wrap it on a tree or two, you're like, oh yeah, we got this.
My sister and brother-in-law are very accomplished rock climbers.
Oh, cool.
I can't stand it. I have a fear of heights, so there's a problem right there.
Yep.
I'm not flexible at all, and I don't really have a lot of upper body strength, so it's a really bad combination for me. And you won't see me rock climbing anytime.
You've got like ski body, but I'm sure your quads can be bent, for days and not even notice it.
Yeah, keep me on the ground. I don't need to be up high with a rope saving me.
Right, exactly. Well, have you ever done like the heli skiing or whatever out of a helicopter?
Yeah, I have.
You're not afraid of that?
Oh, it's scary, but it's worth it once they drop you off. Yeah, crazy story. I actually, Patrick, the CEO of Overstock, his brother owns Alyeska, which is like the biggest resort in Alaska.
Oh, wow.
Heli skis like
in Alaska, you said?
Yeah, in Alaska. So we got to a friend of mine. I went up there and helped him with his marketing for a week and took me heli skiing. And that was just like heli skiing in Alaska. If you like, in terms of step ups, like you'd come to Utah and your mind would be just completely blown by just skiing on a resort. And then you get used to that. And then you go heli skiing in Alaska. That's just another whole world of like advanced skiing. But yeah, that was a special treat that I got to do that. Only been once, but it was in Alaska in the Chugach Mountains. So it was pretty insane.
Yeah, no, that sounds legit. I don't know if my skiing's up to that. I got to get back into it, but COVID has me doing all sorts of things. I'm a mountain climber and I hadn't climbed mountains in a while. So now I'm back at it. And same thing with, probably getting back into skiing this winter too, just because it's a safe thing to do. Like you're all by yourself,
Yeah. It's normal to be socially distanced when you ski. I think it's a really safe thing. It's like, I've been playing a ton of golf because it's the one sport that's like, you don't have to be near anybody. It's great. And you look at like the golf numbers have gone through the roof this past year. Just different world, we adapt pretty well.
I think skiing numbers will go through the roof as well because
I think so.
I'm already wearing a mask anyways because the air is cold. Huh.
Right.
Well, that works. Yeah, I don't have to touch anything, anyone. The only thing is you may not be able to get those extra large chocolate chip cookies in the lodge.
Yeah, I'll probably move all that stuff outside.
They probably, but how cool would that be? Like a little drive up. I don't know about the drive up beer bar, but a drive up cookie, yeah, here, swipe my card. Let's go. Let's do it.
They have all that stuff here in Utah already because it's
Do they?
never
See, we're
freezing cold
behind.
when you go.
We're
Well,
behind.
it's just that the weather's so bad. It's freezing. You
Yeah.
don't want to sit outside, Here it's like beautiful and sunny, and so yeah, we eat outside, and après ski is a fun thing to do out here.
Yeah. See, I don't know if I go skiing, am I just not going to ever want to ski again back here? Or like, I got to move.
There is a risk of that for sure. There's definitely a risk of that.
Oh man. Sick. Well, got a hypothetical for you because you
Sure.
really interesting, journey, especially a lot of the time growing and incubating in Overstock. You get to use my time machine because I may or may not have one in Nashua. So it's in the backyard, covered with a tarp. You get to use this, and it goes back in time, and you get to meet yourself a couple days after you graduated school. A couple days after, just in case you partied right that day, right? So it's a couple days after it. You could go meet that version of you. What are you going to tell yourself? What kind of advice would you give yourself? What kind of things would you tell yourself, knowing all the different experiences you've been to?
Yeah, early on in my career, I really didn't have any work-life balance, and it sort of was unsustainable. I put on weight. I was just working all the time. And I always thought of it as sort of like a sprint. It was almost like a panic, it was like, this just has to happen. And a little bit of that was the Overstock culture. Like we really pushed each other hard. It was very competitive, but it's not sustainable. And, the big reason why I left, it was just like, I can't do this to myself anymore.
Right.
So I think, my advice to a younger Geoff would be, you got to be able to do it for years and years on end. You can't just think that it's like today or tonight and tomorrow, and then it's the end of the week, and then it's the end of the month and the end of the quarter. The business world here is really set up for like kind of constant stress and sprints, Now you still have to do them at times, but I think you have to think about, especially if you're kind of a high performing, like charging type person, you got to set yourself up so that you can do it over a long period of time. And you're comfortable with it. It's part of your lifestyle. You enjoy it. You enjoy work, instead of it be this sort of all encompassing thing. And that's really hard to do, because even as I talk to young employees and people getting their careers started, like their mentality is just like, go get it. And so you're probably going to do that for a couple of years, but at some point you have to kind of get into a zone that you're like, yeah, I could do this for like 20 years. I don't know if I'm there yet, but I think that's the advice that I'd give myself.
Yeah, it's smart. I've definitely experienced that too, where sometimes I'd feel like I'm either working on myself or the company, or myself or the project. And one of them was taking a back seat, I'm like, oh, the company's growing or my project's succeeding. And then I'm like, man, I'm in rough shape after that physically. And then you feel bad anyways. You succeeded, but you just feel blah.
Yeah. Then the time off, you can't even really enjoy because you're trying to get back in shape or whatever it is that you're trying to do. I agree with that. I'm not the best example of it in action, I don't think, but, I've gotten better at it over the years.
Yeah. But even recognizing it, being more intentional about it just pays off.
That's a good point.
And sometimes you got to come first,
Yeah.
And
what would you tell yourself? I'd love to hear. Maybe you've already shared it on the podcast.
Yeah, no, it's
you have
cool.
an incredible background, time in the military and doing what you're doing now. And what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, it's really there's like a magic intersection when it's like your passion and maybe call it purpose, or like your occupation, the thing that you're good at. And then your passion doing that, like doing your passion for a job, for work. I would tell myself to like go with the feelings. Right. And so, okay, you're doing this. Do you hate that? Then don't do that. Like that degree in school, or, I did some hardcore math classes that are just like, I have bad dreams about years later, but like, but also figuring out, where is that intersection? And I really love this thing. For me, it was Pardot, right? I was talking about Pardot, marketing automation, many moons ago. And I couldn't shut up about it. Like that's a thing. The things you can't shut up about if you're a talker, or you can't stop writing about if you're a writer, however you communicate, those are the things that I got to zero in on. And just kind of telling myself, to pay attention to that, because I was always full of ideas. And then some would go by the wayside. But I'd be like, okay, if you start thinking about something and you can't stop thinking about it, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. And maybe it means you leave that job and go do this job, but kind of like zero in, and really the intersection of purpose and passion is really what I would tell myself to pay attention to. And then also keep trying the goofy things. Like I've, how many websites I've launched that were weird, right? One was like, like to donate. Like if you like this page, it'll donate $1 to a nonprofit. And here's a bunch of them. Just click down the list. Also just interesting different things I was experimenting with. But that was like my battleground or the breeding ground for eventually when it came down to do an actual company, or the third or fourth time, it's like, oh, I've done this before. I know how to make an LLC. I know how to do this because I was playing around. So I would encourage myself to continue playing around, do those things that are fun, pay attention to what you don't mind staying up all night for.
Yeah, I like that. That's good advice. What would you say you learned from the Marines that applies now to your success in business? Like what's something that, myself has never been in the military, missed as that you learned, that really helps you, that, you find as a strength now?
Yeah, it's a good question too. Freedom. So a lot of the military mostly sucks. Not the people. Don't click me, weirdos. The life in the military really sucks. That's the way to say it. So it's really tough. And not only is it really tough, but even when it's not tough, you don't own yourself. You're an indentured servant. And so you don't just get to decide that you want to go out this weekend. And if somebody a couple of ranks above you is like, I'm not happy with, the lot of you, none of you can go out this weekend. That's how it is. And so you start to really appreciate the weekends, those moments, appreciate later on when you get out, the ability to go, I want to make a trip. I want to go climb a mountain. I want to take off on Tuesday, right? Or in whether the company you're working at allows you to do that or not, but at least you have, or I want to change companies, right? I want to change bosses. We can do that. And
that's a really good point. I never thought of that.
Yeah. You can't do that. If you don't like your commander, if you don't like your platoon, and thankfully I had really cool people that were, above me and in charge of me. And for the most part, they were just all really cool people. But you could get a real shithead, right? For sure. And you would see them and you're like, oh, I thought, and you hear all this talk about, oh, the military leadership course, like the best leaders are forged in the military. Well, they are, but also sometimes the worst ones too. So you roll the dice and you can't decide, I don't like this. And now they own your life and they can tell you to go over here and go over there. So it's really weird. So now I really respect when I see like young kids now that are like going off to boot camp or this or that. I realize and it was cool at the time to get your military discount, but I realized, well, actually, it's cool while you're in it, but it sucks. And so half the reason you have these relationships with people is because you were in the shit together. Not that you were in happy land together, you were in like terrible land. And I'm sure that's the same with like startups and other things. The people that I was in the worst jobs with, sometimes we keep in touch because we're all working for the worst person ever, or something like that.
Well, it's that, but on a whole different level, right? Like you at least go home after your terrible boss.
Or quit or leave your job.
Yeah. You just get to go on vacation a couple times a year. That's just like you're stuck.
There's also a really good point. Visiting countries. Like you've traveled a lot, but like visiting Iraq when there's no sewer and the sewer is like a hole in your house that trickles into a hole in your wall, which trickles into the street. Right. And we're driving in these Humvees and people are actually glad to see us there, which is wild, right? You'd think with news and stuff that 99.999% of people were like, thank you for being here, waving at us. We threw candy to their kids and we were nice to them. There was that like 0.0001% that would like pop up every, which is like your natural criminals, I guess, anywhere, right? Would just pop up and be like, we hate you. Let's battle, right? Or let's try to blow you up. But otherwise, they're all really nice, but you realize, okay, their poop is coming out into the street. And we're driving through that. Like, we take for granted the fact that you can walk into a McDonald's and go to the bathroom.
Flush
you have to pay for it, and it flushes and it goes bye-bye, right? But like you don't get that there. And so I really appreciated that. And it would be so bad where you're driving through it in your Humvee that we would tell one of the guys, we'd tell Josh, hey man, light up a cigarette. Was that allowed in a Humvee? I don't quite remember, but we would say, light that thing, because we would much rather smell cigarette smoke than whatever else we're driving through.
Oh man, that's
which is
wild.
weird to think about with all the non-smoking stuff. So it just makes you appreciate what you got, not only the freedom, but then just being like, wow, like cool. Like we live in a really neat place, you know?
Yeah. That's a really good point. That gives a lot of perspective. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, sure, man. Sure. It's fun to talk about. Yeah. Wild, fast, kind of like fast experience where, you know, it's over and you're like, whoa.
Flies by. Yeah.
Yeah.
For 6 years, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So a little bit of time, but
that's a good chunk.
Yeah. But what's cool is you stay in shape, right? Cause kind of like maybe on the ski team, like people actually like, oh, are you in shape? Are we running together? Are we exercising together? And you're good.
Yeah.
But when you get out, like no one's like the accountability going like, how you doing today? Did you run your 5K today? Like no one.
Right. That doesn't happen anymore.
There's an advantage to that.
Yeah. I was so in shape for so long that I like the freedom not to be in shape and like eat whatever I want and not exercise. Like that got me where, you know, it was just gone from, you know, having to work out 3 hours a day to like, I'm going to do nothing. That was pretty freeing for me.
Look at me doing nothing.
Yeah. I regret not keeping
it
up. I know. I do regret not keeping it up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's hard to get it back after you get rid of it. So
yeah.
Crazy times, man. Well, hey, where can people connect with you on LinkedIn? Where can they get info on the Huckabee? And like maybe what's the first thing they should try or test or analysis?
Yeah. So the easiest on LinkedIn, I'm Geoff with a G, Geoff, Atkinson. Our site, huckabee.com, is the best way to get in touch with us. If you fill out a contact us form and, you know, mention the fact that you saw me on the Hard Corps marketing show, and we take care of podcast listeners because they're very smart. They always get a discount.
Nice.
And they're just well taken care of. So, and then what was the last question?
Oh no, that's good. Yeah. So you want them to do the contact us form, and then, but what should they do?
What should they do for like their own SEO?
Oh no, for like from the Huckabee, like, is there a particular analysis that's going to happen first?
Yeah. If you go to the page speed page on our site, there's a request for inclusion in our page speed beta, which is free. That's a great freebie. You know, you don't get it forever, but like you can see whether the product will work for you or not. And it's not as expensive as their other products. So good way to get started.
Okay. Sweet, man. Good stuff. Thanks for being here. This has been fun. Hanging out, talking SEO, skiing, mountains.
Yeah.
That craziness.
Totally. My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and let's keep in touch.
Yeah, man, for sure. And I will literally show up at your door once we can actually travel and be like, let's go skiing.
Yeah. That sounds fun.
And and so for people listening, for sure go do I'm going to do it. And my site's going to be faster than your site, so you better do it. But if you learned something, and I know you did, because I literally have pages of notes over here, front and back, then share this on LinkedIn. But your takeaway, don't just share the link or something, but like, this is what I learned. Maybe it's the page speed or the Google page speed insights, Lighthouse. Look up your speed, post it, talk about it, and then, you know, tag myself, tag Geoff. We'll enter some dialogue with you. We'll get some comments going. That's thought leadership. That's how you do it. It's plain and simple. It's no black box there. It's very straightforward. So do that. Start a conversation. And again, Geoff, this has been awesome, man. Thanks for coming on here.
My pleasure, Casey. Thanks for having me.
Right on. For those listening, this has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will catch you all next time.